Shogo is an ugly nepo baby set to inherit his father's company after his death. However, everything changes after learning that he needs to marry to access the wealth, so he starts rizzing all the hottest girls in school to find a wife. This story starts when Shogo's ultra-wealthy father passes away and leaves Shogo as the inheritor of his company. During the funeral, Shogo sneaks off to get some air, but then he hears a girl calling out to him from outside. When she claims to be his sister, Shogo gets surprised and says he has no siblings, but she insists that it is true, and suddenly drops the bomb that she wants to marry him. Before Shogo can take a look at the Alabama creep, an assistant named Risa shows up to check on him, allowing his mystery sister to get away. Later, Shogo meets with his mum, Kanoko, who reminds him of his father's final condition, which is that he must get married to become the company head. To help with this, she enrolls him in a new school and gives him keys to a new apartment close to his school so he can rizz up as many baddies as he wants. The next day, Shogo gets lost on the way to school and spots a bakery, which reminds him of his father's last wish to celebrate another birthday together. Just then, he sees a girl named Kanawe walking out of the store, completely oblivious to the truck Kun speeding in her direction. Thankfully, Shogo shoves her away just in time and rushes over to make sure she didn't get hurt. After picking up her weird phone, he notices that she has the same uniform as him, so he explains that he can't find his way to school, and Kanawe offers to take him there. However, Kanawe takes him to a park first and shares her cream puff to thank him for saving her. After he takes a bite, she notices a crumb on his face, so she leans in to clean it while he sneaks a peek at her melons and gets flustered. Afterward, Shogo finally makes it to school and meets his homeroom teacher, who introduces him to the class and tells him to grab a seat beside Kanawe. As soon as he gets there, another classmate named Miyabi gives him the stink eye for no reason, which surprises Shugo since he doesn't know her. After classes, as he helps Kanawe take out the trash, all the girls start oogling Shogo like he is the rich version of Toji, but Shogo barely notices this because he is still thinking about Miyabi's hostility, so Kanawe explains that Miyabi has always been antisocial, so he shouldn't take her reactions seriously. As they get familiar with each other, Shoujo tells Kanawe to call him by his first name, and she tells him to do the same. This makes them both blush, but then, she notices a scar on his head and asks about it, so Shogo explains how he got it from some freak accident, but doesn't remember the details. When he expresses his disgust over the ugly scar, Kanawe suddenly places her forehead against his to make him feel better, but he starts feeling something else in his pants. Kanawe notices this and tries to kiss him, but Shogo pulls back right before getting smacked in the head with a can. The next moment, Miyabi climbs down a tree, and Kanawe starts making up stories to hide what she was about to do. However, after Kanawe leaves for some council work, Miyabi calls Shugo a player for trying to kiss Kanawe on his very first day. Shogo says she was just looking at his scar, and they're just classmates, but Miyabi tells him to prove it by kissing her. She even offers to let him use some tongue, but Shogo proves that he still has some self-respect by refusing. Later that night, Shogo receives a food delivery and is surprised when he finds a birthday cake because he didn't tell anyone about today being his birthday. He also finds a figurine of his favorite superhero and an old photo of himself, which triggers a sudden pain in his brain. Just then, his phone rings and he hears the girl from the funeral, who then claims to be the one kissing him in the photo. Shogo demands to know who she is, but she only tells him she's in the same school as him before hanging up, leaving him confused. The next day, in school, Shogo continues thinking about this mysterious sister he has never met before until he spots someone watching him from a corner. He immediately chases her up to the roof and demands to know the truth. After turning to face Shogo, she shows him a flyer to a cafe called the Lyrical Sisters and says anyone can experience sibling love by visiting the cafe. Naturally, Shogo gets confused, so Mei introduces herself as a wannabe entrepreneur who just wants to learn how his father built a successful empire. This explains why she has been stalking him, but since she is not the mysterious sister he has been looking for, Shogo skips school to find his family's register. Much later, he leaves the office, visibly disappointed because he couldn't find anything about his mystery sister. The next moment, a hooded stranger holds a knife against Shugo and takes him into a dark alley before revealing himself as Mr. X, an assassin working for his father's company. Before Shogo can ask any questions, Mr. X asks if he is searching for his illegitimate sister. Surprised, Shogo asks how he knows about it, so Mr. X mentions the time his mom spoke about it. However, he has no idea who this mystery girl is because Kanoko never wanted to find her, and his dad is the only other person who knew who she was. The next day, while heading to school, Shogo recalls telling Mr. X that his mystery sister wants to marry him. After giving it some thought, Mr. X said she was probably one of the girls trying to get close to him at school. Right then, Kanawe runs up to Shogo and tells him about a school dance happening later in the week so they can go together. Minutes later, they all get to class, and Mr. X shows up as a new transfer student named Ikusu. As the ladies soak up their seats with kitty juice. He works his magic on one of them to get the seat in front of Shogo. After classes, Shogo takes him up to the roof to ask why he suddenly enrolled. Ikusu then says it's the only way to keep him safe before telling Shogo to start testing all the suspicious girls in his life so they can find his sister. When Shogo says they won't just let him take their samples, Ikusu suggests using a special drug that turns chicks into glizzy-hungry animals. Shogo starts to wonder if he needs a mental evaluation, but after seeing so many girls blushing over them, he suggests having this conversation at home. Later that day, Shogo asks Ikusu why they had to hold hands in school because everyone now thinks that he is taking over from Diddy. Once inside, Ikusu asks to use his shower and explains how important it is for an assassin to have no body odor. He also tells Shogo not to peek into the bathroom, and Shogo accepts, only to suddenly recall that he didn't bring the towels inside. After grabbing them, he tries to give Ikusu and freezes in shock because Mr. X is actually a mistress. Minutes later, Ikusu is casually lying in his bed with her cakes drying off on the sheets while Shugo struggles to keep Big Johnny under control. A couple of days later, Shogo waits at the school's entrance like a butler until Konoe pulls up looking like the princess you creeps dream of at night. Shogo immediately compliments her, and with that, they head inside for the ballroom party. As Shogo tries to take in the beauty of everything, Council President Mana hops on stage and starts hyping everyone up until her assistant Rinka tells her to stop acting like a coked-up bottle girl. After she apologizes for Mana's overexcitement, Shogo asks Konoe for a dance and proceeds to twirl her around until everyone starts applauding them. As Mana and Maiko rush over to commend Konoe, Rinka asks Shogo to dance, but he gets cold feet, so she asks if he can't handle a real dancer. Shogo immediately accepts and uses a special dance move that surprises Rinka and everyone else. Rinka then decides to show off as well, but as she speeds up her moves, Shogo easily matches every step and finishes with a move that leaves her speechless. The next moment, Mana jumps into him, resulting in a crash that makes him grab Rinka's jugs for safety. Shugo immediately tries to explain, but she responds with a brutal kick to the face. Minutes later, Shogo heads out for some fresh air and spots Miyabi, so he walks over and asks why she's not dancing like everyone else. After she claims not to be interested, he offers to dance with her, but she gets pissed and says she doesn't want to dance with him or anyone else. Shogo then says he wants to dance with her alone, and this easily melts her frozen heart, so she accepts. While they dance, Konoe starts looking for Shogo everywhere. Just then, Miyabi's dress slips, revealing her mini melons, so she hugs Shogo to hide them. When she asks if he saw them, he denies it, but she refuses to believe him until Konoe shows up. After she fixes the dress, Miyabu runs off, and Konoe notices that Shogo might already be attached to her. Much later, Shogo is back at home cleaning up when he gets a call from his mystery sister. She claims she was close to him the entire night, but when he starts demanding answers again, she hangs up the phone. Meanwhile, Miyabi is currently in her bath, trying to convince herself that Shogo likes her petite melons. Days later, Shogo wakes up to Ikusu completely exposed in front of his bed. After getting dressed, she explains how she decided to take a bath in his shower after a late-night mission. Shogo then asks how she got in, so she pulls out a hairpin and says she has the perfect solution for his sister problem. To make sure he never marries this mystery sister, she offers to marry him and start a normal family together. Naturally, Shogo gets shocked and asks if she knows what she is talking about. Ikusu then says it won't be a problem since they only need to hug to make offspring. After Shogo randomly gives her a guide on the art of making offspring, Ikusu still wants to do it with him. To make matters worse, she wants to start practicing right now, but as she tries to start, Miyabi and Konoe show up. Ikusu proudly says they were just learning how to crack, which makes the girls think that Shogo actually likes glizzies. Later that night, Shogo gets out of the shower and answers a call from his mystery sister, who then asks if he wants to see what her plots look like because she just hopped in the bath. Shogo resists the urge to say yes and demands to know who she is, but she tells him to say he loves her 10 times first. After Shogo reluctantly does this, she hangs up the phone. Much later, in a dream, Shogo gets overwhelmed as every girl he knows claims to be his sister while trying to clean his pipe. He eventually wakes up and feels happy that it was just a dream before seeing Konoe, who then tells him to get ready for school. Before he can react, Miyabi also comes out of the kitchen to greet him. Moments later, they explain how they intend to cure his love for fruity boys by spending all their time with him. When he asks why they are acting like his sisters, they show him the Sister Cafe flyer they found on his table. He tries to explain that he got it from May, but they are already convinced that he has a thing for sisters, which is why they are putting on this act. Konoe goes first and acts like an innocent sister trying to help her brother get dressed, but Miyabi quickly explains that no regular sister does that. After claiming to be the most realistic sister, she pulls out one of his boxers and says she wore them all through the night to feel warm. Fed up, Shogo tosses them both outside, but just a couple of hours later, in class, they grab him and offer to feed him lunch. When he asks Ikusu for help, they both refuse to let him go and remind him that Ikusu wants to carry his offspring. Moments later, they present Shogo with a special lunch packed with supplements to summon his inner freak. Shogo barely notices and eats every bite, but after getting back home that evening, he gets frustrated because they keep making suspicious sounds in the bathroom. Afterwards, they both get into bed with him, and he starts fighting his intrusive thoughts because one of them might be his sister. However, after recalling that his sister usually calls around this time, he decides to wait for the call so he can smash both of them. The girls even take things a step further by revealing their plots because the room is hot. Unfortunately, the call never comes, so Shugo spends the entire night feeling pain in his pipe. The next day, he takes off running to escape the girls and eventually finds a spot to hide, but it's the council office. Minutes later, the girls finally stop, and Miyabi blames Konoe for slowing them down with her massive buns. Konoe gets embarrassed and admits that her dump truck is a lot larger, but then Miyabi calls her a closet freak. They immediately start arguing and decide to search for Shogo separately. Meanwhile, Rinka has just heard why he was running, so she tells Shogo to reject the girls if he doesn't like them, but Shogo says he doesn't hate the attention. He just can't get too close because one of them might be a certain someone he isn't allowed to date. At this, Mana says he doesn't have to date everyone he gets close to, he can just be their friend. She also says they probably feel bad about chasing him around while he tries to get away from them. Several minutes later, Shogo runs into Miyabi, who then tries to ignore him. However, after she says she has something to do, Shogo follows her to the mall to shop for swimsuits. While doing so, he notices a familiar logo and realizes that a rival company has started making swimsuits as well. He then grabs one to get a closer look, but Miyabi gets creeped out. The next moment, they race home to avoid getting soaked, but then Shogo sees a truck-kun speeding towards them, so he hugs Miyabi to protect her from the rain. Minutes later, he is in her apartment, asking if it's really okay for him to be in the girl's dorm. After she forces him into the bath and tells him to fill it up for her, Shogo spots a Crabzu's figurine and recalls the hero figurine from his birthday, because they are characters from the same show. This makes him convinced that Miyabi is his sister, so when she comes back to show off her swimsuit, he asks for the person she wants to marry. Miyabi gets surprised by the sudden question, but she finally admits that she has always wanted to marry him. The next moment, Shogo says they can't get married because she is his sister. This shatters Miyabi's heart, so she tells him to leave. Much later, Shogo is still thinking about Miyabi when his phone rings, but it's just Ikusu messing around. She tries to change her voice, but Shogo calls her out, saying he recognized her instantly because her voice sounds like a robot who's been through too much in IKEA. Ikusu admits that she's using a voice changer, and Shogo remembers the time she called him while in the shower. He realizes she's probably using a small, water-resistant device, and Ikusu says that she'll check it out and tells him to wait for her. The next day, Shogo shows up at school and sees Miyabi. As soon as she hears his voice, she runs away like she just saw a ghost. Konoe then notices Shogo looking all sad and asks what's up, but he says nothing and insists they go to class. Over in class, the teacher starts talking about her new car, and some dumb guy jokingly offers to give her a ride on his back, causing the teacher to smack him. Later, Shugo runs into Miyabi again, and this time, he's feeling pretty down about it. Konoe asks what's going on with him and Miyabi. Shugo tries to brush it off, but Konoe ain't buying it. She says that Miyabi seemed a bit off and that she changed after Shogo showed up. Shogo admits that Miyabi is actually his little sister, and Konoe is surprised by this. Later, Miyabi glances at Shogo in class, but when their eyes meet, she quickly looks away. Then, Shugo gets a call from his younger sister, who just says goodbye and hangs up, leaving him confused. Ikusu then sends him a photo of a phone and calls him again, saying she found the device. She tells him it's a high-efficiency voice changer made by the Kavas company. Apparently, the company had to recall it because it was too risky. Shugo remembers that Konoe has this phone, so he rushes off to find her. On his way, he bumps into Rinka, who decides now's a good time to lecture him about running in the halls. Shugo asks if she knows where Konoe is, and she agrees to help. Eventually, he runs into Mei, who invites him to her cafe, but Shogo declines the offer. He eventually catches up with Miyabi, but she totally ignores him and keeps walking. He grabs her arm and says he needs her help to find Konoe. She asks why, and Shugo gives her the puppy dog eyes and asks her to please help him, so Miyabi reluctantly agrees. He then remembers a place Konoe likes to hang out, so they head there. They find Konoe sitting alone, and when she asks how he knew she'd be there, he tells her that it's because she used to tell him she likes sitting there with cream puffs. Konoe starts crying and apologizes. She talks about how she missed the good old days when they used to play together as kids, and she remembers a photo their dad took of them. She reveals that her dad and Shogo's dad were old friends. Years ago, a car was speeding towards Konoe, but Shogo went full Superman mode and rushed in front of her, pushing her out of the way, so the car hit him instead. He then raised his head and asked if he saved her like Grand Bellion, his hero. Back in the present, Shogo is clueless as usual, so he asks if he really tried to be like some random hero, but Konoe says that he is her hero. She says that after everything happened, her dad and Shogo's dad stopped talking, and she couldn't see him anymore. Konoe starts getting all teary and apologizes, saying she didn't think things would turn out like this. She wanted to stop, but talking to Shogo as his little sister just felt too good. Shogo reassures her that she can always ask for his help whenever whenever she needs it. Then, Miyabi pulls up and asks what they're doing. She reminds him that he told her to find Konoe, but then ditched her, and now he's here acting as if nothing happened. The three of them talk things through, and Konoe admits that it was all her fault. She says she deceived Shogo, and she regrets it. Shogo says it's his fault too, and Miyabi, trying to avoid the drama, says that now everything's cleared up. Shogo can marry her without any hesitation. Konoe asks what the hell's going on, and Shogo says he has no clue what Miyabi's talking about. Miyabi then reminds him that when they were kids, they used to pretend to get married. Shogo now remembers their pretend marriage, and Konoe reveals that after becoming friends with him, she fell in love with him. She says he was her first love, but when her dad stopped visiting the hospital, she couldn't see him anymore. And when she found out he transferred here, she was beyond happy. An overwhelmed Shogo apologizes, and Konoe then admits that when he talked about marriage, she thought he remembered their pretend wedding. Our clueless boy asks if she really thought about that, and Konoe says yes, she's serious about marrying him. Miyabi, jealous much, asks Konoe to get out of her way, and of course, the two girls start fighting, while Shogo, the clueless mediator, tries to calm them down. Later, Shogo realizes that the problem is still far from being solved. He remembers the girl who showed up on the day of his father's funeral, and wonders if she was really his little sister since neither Miyabi nor Konoe was there. The next morning, Konoe barges in to wake him up, and he's instantly embarrassed. She decides to remind him about when they were kids and how he pretended to marry Miyabi. Now, she wants to do the same thing with him. Just when Shogo thinks things couldn't get any worse, Miyabi walks in, making the whole situation even more awkward. She says that a newlywed bride would only wear an apron and nothing else. Shogo is unsure of how to react, and Shogo finally realizes that this isn't some weird dream. Days later, Shogo is asleep when his phone starts ringing and ruins his peace. The caller claims to be his little sister and tells him to wake up because it is already morning. This shocks him because the voice on the phone is not Konoe's. The poor loser instantly gets confused and wonders how he is somehow getting another call from a so-called sister. The girl asks why he is so shocked, then reminds him that she is his little sister and that they met at his father's funeral. She says that she thinks about him all the time and even called him this morning just to wake him up. Shogo says that it's only 6 in the morning, but the girl talks about how waking up early is good for health. This makes Shogo even more shaken because she somehow knows school stuff. She then reveals that she goes to the same school, which adds to the surprise. The girl says that she's worried about him because he has been waking up late and coming to school late. She claims that since he lives alone, he does some unholy things every night and that this is bad for his body. Shogo denies it right away and says he was doing homework, while wondering how this girl knows anything about his life. She then says she does not want him to have bad habits after they get married. At this point, he questions this strange concern and clearly says he is not going to marry her. The girl declares that marrying him is her destiny, then hangs up and leaves him alone with fear and zero answers. Later, as Shogo heads to school, he runs into Konoe standing outside. She tells him that she woke up early and came to walk to school with him. This makes him even more nervous, since his morning already feels cursed. Konoe notices his weird behavior and asks what is wrong, but he brushes it off like a scared idiot. Konoe then asks if he stayed up late, which makes Shogo remember the creepy call from earlier. He says it is not like he does that every night, instantly exposing himself for no reason. Konoe looks confused, and Shogo quickly tries to fix it, but only makes it worse. She points out that his eyes are red and that he looks tired. Shogo claims that he will wake up fully by the time they reach school, but Konoe says that teachers hate sleepy students. As class representative, she says she cannot ignore this, and out of nowhere, she grabs his hand and kisses him. Shogo freezes on the spot, and Konoe checks if his sleepiness is gone, while he's all embarrassed and broken. She explains that watching over students is part of her duty. In class later, Shogo can't stop thinking about the kiss, and he's all red-faced like a total rookie. He starts imagining a future where he marries Konoe and gets kissed every morning like it is normal. He thinks about what their wedding night would be, where he promises to love her forever, only for her to suddenly reveal that she is his little sister, and this is a no Alabama fly zone. This scares him right out of sleep, and he ends up screaming in class. Later, Shogo tells Ikusu that he got another call from his little sister. Ikusu asks if it is Konoe again, but Shogo explains that he thought so at first, and then realized it wasn't her. Ikusu wonders if Konoe could be using her strange phone again and acting normal so no one gets suspicious, so she says it might be someone else entirely, and asks how another person could even copy a little sister's voice. Shogo explains that Konoe's phone is a test model that never makes it to the market. It gets pulled back before getting sold. Ikusu tells him that if even one of those phones leaks out, then many people could have it. Shogo remembers when that phone caused so many problems that he had to tell 3 girls everything while they helped him look for Konoe. He then wonders if his real little sister could be one of those 3 girls. Ikusu says it seems possible, but also warns that someone else could have heard things they were not meant to hear. Suddenly, a girl shows up looking for him and drags him to the head of the newspaper club. The club leader then reminds him that he's the heir of a huge company, and everyone at school is still talking about this. She wants to interview him and keeps calling him her favorite big brother over and over. The next day, Shogo gets another call from his little sister. She wakes him up again and says he oversleeps every morning. He says he cannot sleep because he stays up all night thinking about who she really is. She laughs this off and says he must be thinking about her because he is a creep, making him end the call right away. However, the calls keep coming every morning for days, and because of this, Shogo barely sleeps and looks like a walking zombie. One morning, he runs into Miyabi on the way to school. She says she came to pick him up and points out that he looks terrible. Shogo admits he has not slept well, and Miyabi says that she understands and starts calling him a late-night monster who does some weird but cultured things. Shogo asks if she is heading to swimming practice, and after showing off her swimsuit, Miyabi says practice is after school, so she came dressed like this. Shogo gets embarrassed and tells her not to surprise him like that. He tries to cover her up, but things go wrong as her skirt falls. Miyabi acts shy but clearly enjoys the moment, and right then, Kanawe shows up and sees everything. She gets all mad on the spot, making Shogo even more frustrated than he already was. Over at school, Shogo looks for a quiet place to sleep. Mei notices him and asks if he is sick, but he explains that he's just tired. Mei then says she knows a secret place where he can nap and invites him as long as he visits her cafe later. He agrees, and she leads him to a hidden storage room and tells him no one else knows about it. After school, Shogo waits for Miyabi to finish swim practice, and they go to look for Mei's cafe together. Once there, Shogo notices that every dish is themed around little sisters, and after ordering omelet rice, he regrets the decision to show up. Just then, Mei also shows up and asks why he came, so Shogo reminds her of the promise. The next day, Shogo gets woken up again by the scheduled sister calls and goes back to the storage room. Mei greets him, and while picking up books, she drops them, and her phone falls out. Shogo realizes it is the same kind of phone Konoe has, so he tells Ikusu that Mei also owns one. Ikusu wonders if Mei is his little sister, but Shogo explains that his sister's age is unclear, and that she could be older or younger than him. The next moment, the newspaper club girl shows up again, and Shogo says he does not want interviews. She then asks if he knows that Mei plans to close the cafe and go to America. Much later, Mei sits alone at the storage room when Shogo walks in, looking sad as usual. He asks if she really plans to close the cafe and go to America, saying he heard it from the newspaper club. Mei looks surprised because she thinks he came to ask about the strange phone again, not this. Shogo keeps talking and reminds her that the cafe is full of memories of her mom and that she worked hard just to buy it back. He asks why she would give it up now. Mei then explains that she made a promise to her dad and needs to focus on school, which means studying in America and closing the cafe. Shogo points out that the cafe is doing well, but Mei admits that even if things look fine now, the bank will fail later because she's good at math but bad at business. Shogo finally uses his brain for once and realizes the problem is not the cafe itself. He says he will help bring more customers. This shocks Mei because she does not expect help from a guy who can barely manage his own life. Later, Mei thinks about Shogo and wonders if she should trust him, but deep down, she kind of feels like the cafe is still doomed no matter what. Shogo then works on an ad poster and gives the draft to a guy named Tanaka, asking him to clean it up. After that, he goes to the newspaper club and tells the president that he's ready for an interview, but only if the ad gets printed first, and the president agrees. Miyabi notices Shugo actually working for once, and at the same time, Mei brings a cat costume for Konoe, which instantly turns Shogo red. Miyabi teases Konoe and says a top student like her cannot work as a waitress, and Konoe gets mad, swearing that she can do it. Her emotions go wild, and Shogo says that he sees nothing while clearly seeing everything in 4K. Mei explains that her tail reacts to her feelings because of some strange system. Later, Miyabi sees something that looks like dirty boy underwear on Konoe and leaves in silence. Konoe then claims that she doesn't wear stuff like that, with her tail popping up again. After that, Mei, Rinka, and Shogo start cooking together. Shogo blazes Rinka's food like he just tasted real cooking for the first time. So Mei tries it herself and adds it to the menu with a wild name about a fearless little sister. Rinka hates the name and says she is not fearless, and Mei explains the meaning, but no one listens. Rinka then starts crying because no one takes her feelings seriously. Later, Konoe trains to control her tail with Shogo's help. He tells her to focus, but she gets all shy, and the tail moves again. Mei finds it funny and draws it. Konoe asks Shogo to fix it, and he tries, but every move just makes her more embarrassed. The next day, Shogo hands flyers for the cafe like a sad part-time worker, until a group of girls from the Lyrical Sisters Cafe walk up to him, calling him Big Brother Senpai. This confuses Shogo because his life already has too many sister problems. The girls tell him that everyone there calls him that since he helps out and acts like a big brother, and he has no choice but to accept. A chick named Kurumi then shows up and thanks him for helping the cafe. She says she came early, so she will help him out. However, Shogo does not even know who she is at first, proving once again that his brain runs on low power. She reminds him that she works here, and only then does he remember, so the two of them agree to work together to save the cafe. Sunday arrives, and the cafe is packed. Customers keep coming in like the place just went viral overnight. Konoha stands at the entrance and welcomes everyone while wearing a costume that makes Shugo look away in shame. Just then, Rinka, Tendo show up together. Mei sees them and says they came at the perfect time. When Miyabi notices the costumes, she looks shocked at first, then laughs, embarrassing Rinka. Shogo thanks Miyabi for coming, but some girls suddenly surround him and ask for photos like he's some superstar. When Ikusu also arrives, Mei gets an idea and makes the girls get even louder as they take photos non-stop while Konoha and Miyabi glare at Shogo as if this is somehow his fault. That night, Mei checks the numbers. Even though they ran out of food, customers kept coming and sales shot up. Shogo gets happy and says they finally pulled it off. Mei then asks him to marry her out of nowhere, and Shogo nearly stops breathing. Mei says he changed her cafe completely and claims his skills run in the family. She says they should join forces and make the strongest offspring ever, and she wants to start right away. Shogo tells her to stop joking, but she makes it clear she is serious in a way that makes him look away and regret his life choices. Before things get worse, Shogo gets a call from Ikusu. She says she forgot her hat at the cafe and asks him to bring it. He then meets Ikusu, and Shogo soon learns that this is Ikusu's plan to keep him safe while watching him. She explains that she figured out something important about the voice-changing phone. Shogo finally realizes that this phone is the root of all his problems. The next morning, Shogo wakes up and notices that his little sister didn't call him for the first time in days. He goes to the balcony and sees a curtain move in the storage room. Then he realizes that Mei has been watching him every day and using the voice-changing phone to call him and pull him into the storage room like a trap. He confronts her, and she admits that she's the one calling him every morning on the phone. She also admits she misunderstood his interest when he suggested fixing the cafe together. Shogo then remembers his father's funeral, and Mei says that she remembers it clearly too, but that is when Shogo realizes the truth. She is not really his little sister. In a flashback, Ikusu uses the cafe trouble and the America story as part of a plan to protect Shogo's real sister. Mei watches Shogo closely to make sure he does not learn the truth too soon. Back in the present, Mei says she wants to tell him everything, but first she needs to know if he can truly protect his sister. Shogo listens and then says he understands, before asking her to continue being his sister's friend. Much later, Shogo is outside the school picking up trash. Like the good little janitor when some random girl walks by, digs into the trash, and pulls out a phone. The next day at school, Shogo shows up and instantly regrets it. Konoha sees him and runs over, and right on cue, Miyabi pops up and sticks her cakes to him like glue. In class, it gets worse. Konoha and Miyabi both hover around him non-stop like two side characters fighting for screen time. Then, during lunch, Konoha starts feeding Shogo like he's some toddler. Miyabi sees this and starts feeding him. Now they're both shoving food at his face, arguing over who gets first turn. Later in sports class, Shogo is running laps and minding his business until Konoha waves at him, all happy, making Miyabi lose it, and she yanks Konoha away. After school, Miyabi walks home glued to Shogo's side again, and Konoha asks if she isn't being a bit too clingy. Miyabi says it's fine because her club is cancelled, so she has free time. Miyabi then asks if Konoha does anything special with him. Konoha denies it, and when Miyabi asks if she ever thinks about things she wants to do with him, Konoha shuts up and blushes. Back at home, Shogo talks to Ikusu about how both girls are acting way too close to him. Ikusu doesn't care at all and just says that's normal since he's here to find a wife. Then she jokes that he should just have kids with both girls and marry the one who gets pregnant first. Shogo says that he could never do that and asks what if one of them is his little sister. So Ikusu reminds him they're longtime friends, not siblings. So no Alabama here. Ikusu then suggests doing a test to settle it fast. Shogo says that if this gets leaked, it would cause massive problems for his rich family. So Ikusu tells him to only do it with someone he fully trusts. Shogo remembers Risa, his mom's assistant, and calls her to explain the plan. Not long after, a delivery guy shows up with a test kit. Shogo reads the instructions and learns that the test can use spit, blood, or pee. He asks Konoha and Miyabi for samples and says it's for safety, not because he doubts them. Konoha agrees and says if it proves she's not his sister, he can finally chill. Shogo then asks her for spit from her mouth. Konoha misunderstands and gets super embarrassed, thinking he meant something rather interesting. Shogo explains that he meant the inside of her mouth, and Miyabi calls him a creep. Shogo then grabs Konoha's sample and asks Miyabi, but she refuses and asks what he plans to do with the sample later. When he mentions pee, Miyabi imagines the worst, slaps Shogo, and storms off, all pissed off. Shogo chases after her, trying to explain, but she yanks her hand away and yells that he's a obsessed with girls' juices. Everyone nearby hears this and stares at him like he's some criminal weirdo, causing Bro's reputation to die instantly. Right then, Rinka shows up and asks what on earth is going on. After she spots the test kit on the ground and asks about it, Shogo lies and says everything is fine. Rinka then reminds them that the school board is visiting, and all eyes are on Shogo since he's the heir of the Mikadano group, so she warns him not to do anything stupid or embarrassing. The board of directors suddenly pulls up to Shogo's class, and they even bring a girl with them. Everyone is staring, whispering, and the teacher can barely teach anything. During lunchtime, Shogo is back to being fed by the girls. The next moment, Mana shows up out of nowhere and tells Shogo that the board wants to see him. Shogo asks who exactly wants him, and Mana says it's a guy named Genda, the boss of some huge company. Shugo then goes to meet Genda, who straight up confirms that Shugo is Kanoko Mikadano's son. Shugo politely thanks him, while completely sweating inside. He also notices a girl nearby who smiles at him while Genda asks him a few questions. Meanwhile, that same girl from earlier is secretly watching him. She suddenly turns on a mic and tells Shogo that she is his little sister. This shocks everyone listening in, and she says that if he finds her next time, a bunch of secrets will spill and everything will break. She tells him to pretend she doesn't exist if he wants everyone to stay happy. Then she warns him to be careful around people and hangs up. Later, Ikusu realizes this is the third time someone has pulled the I'm your little sister card on Shogo. As she wonders what this girl really wants, Shogo comes in. So Ikusu asks what he figured out. He says that Mei dropped her phone in the trash by accident and someone must have taken it. Ikusu then reminds him that the voice changer on that phone is only known by 5 people, meaning the fake little sister is one of them. Later on, Rinka drags Shogo into the student council. She explains that the prank broadcast pissed off the board and hurt the school's image. Now the student council has to crack down hard on rules. Mana thinks that's overkill, but Rinka says that Shogo is famous and watched by the board, so people would listen if he's involved. Shogo doesn't want this job at all, but he eventually accepts it to save face. Rinka then introduces Shingo, the girl who writes reports and will be babysitting him. Meanwhile, Ikusu remembers she was trying to recruit customers at the cafe when the little sister message went out. As a result, she never found out what Rinka was doing at that time. Flashbacks show the board not happy about the announcement, and Rinka asks Shogo what happened. Ikusu points out the biggest suspect, and Shogo is told to keep a close eye on her as part of his job. Soon after, some students are caught trading sus books. Rinka immediately pulls up, snatches the books, and makes Shingo log everything before the students get punished for being cultured. Later, Kurumi shows up wearing a cat headset. Rinka immediately reminds everyone that accessories like that are banned. Mei then tries to recruit a girl to act as her little sister at the cafe, but Rinka appears out of nowhere and shuts that down too, saying scouting is forbidden. Some girls suddenly surround our hopeless girl magnet, cheering that the Oni-chan Empire now has a student council member. A newspaper club girl quickly tries to sneak photos of Shugo, but Rinka blocks her and also warns the newspaper boss not to spread fake news. Meanwhile, Rinka keeps scolding couples for holding hands and reminding everyone that romance at school is not allowed. That night, Rinka tells Shogo he sucks at being a supervisor because he keeps flirting with girls like a shameless simp. She then decides she'll personally teach him how to act properly around girls. The next day, at school, Shugo takes full responsibility as a student council supervisor. When Miyabi walks up and greets him, Shogo instantly locks onto her skirt and tells her it's way too short, breaks school rules, and might show things that should never see daylight. When she tells him to prove it, Shogo pulls out a measuring tape and starts checking her skirt. While he's measuring, Miyabi lifts her skirt a bit and asks if he wants to see something divine. Then she says she'll only show him if he quits the student council. Shogo asks if she's seriously trying to bait him into quitting his job, and right then, Kanawe walks in and sees Shogo crouched there like a criminal. Shogo explains that it's a misunderstanding and he's just doing his holy job. However, Kanawe tells him to prove it by measuring her skirt too. Shogo says hers follows the rules, so there's no need, but Kanawe refuses to move unless he measures it anyway. Miyabi says that if Kanawe wants to break rules, her skirt needs to be just as short. Kanawe then lifts her skirt a little to prove she's serious, and Miyabi lifts hers too. The next moment, a strong wind pushes both skirts, and Shogo sees something he absolutely should not have seen. Konoha blushes and asks if he saw it, but Shogo says no, even if he did. He gives the same response to Miyabi and adds that she's wearing shorts anyway, which exposes him. Just then, Rinka shows up and asks why it sounds like a circus. Later, she sits Shugo down and yells at him. Even while getting yelled at, Shogo's eyes keep drifting like he's possessed, and Rinka calls him out for that. Shogo denies looking anywhere weird, even though no one believes him. Later on, Ikusu asks if he's learned anything about Rinka yet, but Shogo says he's too busy doing student council chores to spy on her. Ikusu then says that Rinka is hard to approach at school, since she's the vice president, so she suggests that they hang out somewhere outside school instead, where roles don't matter. Shogo feels awkward, but admits it makes sense. The next day, Shogo, Rinka, Ikusu, and Mana go to an amusement park. When Shogo asks why everyone is here, Ikusu says bringing more people makes things less awkward. Their first stop is a roller coaster, and Rinka admits it's her first time ever because her family is super strict. Thankfully, they enjoy their ride, and after they get off, some of the girls look like their souls evaporated. Next, they hit a haunted house, and Rinka says she's not scared because only losers fear ghosts. However, after Ikusu puts on a scary mask and jumps out, she almost soils her kitty covers and grabs Shogo for dear life. After that, they go to a zombie shooting game, but after one girl pretends she's totally fine, Ikusu decides to stay with ice cream instead. Before they enter the zombie ride, Shogo and Rinka get told they have to change clothes. Turns out the clothes are swimsuits, and Shogo takes one look at Rinka and immediately wonders why she's wearing something like that. Rinka then says there were no other choices and tells him to stop staring like a creep. Inside the ride, Rinka beats the zombies up like it's nothing, and Shogo just watches in shock. Just then, one zombie throws slime all over them, and Shogo finally understands why swimsuits were required, while Rinka gets mad and absolutely destroys the zombie. More zombies keep coming, and when one suddenly jumps at Rinka, Shogo steps in to protect her. Later, they get surrounded, and the lights suddenly go out. Rinka screams that a zombie is touching her and begs Shogo to save her. When the lights turn back on, Shogo realizes his hand is in quite a cultured place that it should never be. After Rinka immediately slaps him, they go on more rides, and later, Shogo and Rinka sit together drinking juice. Rinka notices the others having fun on a ride, and Shogo suggests they join them. She then says it's a kid ride and refuses at first, but Shogo drives her anyway, and she ends up enjoying it more than she wants to admit. Later, as they walk around a mall, Rinka keeps staring at a keychain and says it feels familiar. Shogo also feels like he's seen it before, but his brain takes forever to connect the dots. That night, Shogo buys the keychain and suddenly remembers seeing the same one attached to a phone before. He realizes Rinka had been staring at it earlier, too, and finally wakes up. The next day, Rinka wonders why Shogo didn't show up for student council duty. She then goes to the club room and finds him waiting like a detective. The next moment, he pulls out a phone with a voice changer and straight up accuses her of being the fake little sister from the school broadcast. He also explains how she used the device to change her voice. Rinka immediately starts laughing and admits that he's gotten smarter, but after slipping up and saying some things she shouldn't know, she decides to fully confess. She explains that director Genda told her to check if Kaneko Mikadona's daughter goes to the school because he wanted dirt for a business deal. Rinka hated doing it, but her parents forced her because she's engaged to Genda's son. She says she almost quit, but then found the voice-changing phone and decided to warn Shogo instead. The broadcast was meant to protect him, not mess with him. Shogo apologizes for thinking she was evil, and he asks if she can cancel the engagement, but Rinka says no, because her family already decided everything. After remembering everything they did together, Shugo suddenly asks her to be his lover. Rinka is shocked, and Shugo explains he means fake dating, so the engagement gets canceled. She asks if that would really work, and Shogo says she shouldn't be forced into a marriage she doesn't want, even if it's for family. Rinka then tells him to close his eyes, and when he eventually opens them, she's suddenly undressed. Rinka then says she can't lie to her family, and if they're going to be lovers, it has to be real. She steps closer and tells him to take responsibility. Right then, another girl walks in, sees everything, and screams. Days later, Shogo eats lunch with Miyabi and Konoe like nothing is wrong. They ask why he quit being a supervisor, but then Rinka immediately walks in, sits next to him, and says they should eat together. She casually calls him her lover in front of everyone, and when Miyabi and Konoe completely lose it, Shogo tells Rinka not to say stuff like that in public. After he explains it's just to cancel her engagement, Rinka thanks him and says it worked. She adds that her dad likes Shogo now, so things are going great, and marriage might actually happen. Miyabi and Konoe then demand to know what the hell he's been doing behind their backs, so Shogo says they've got it all wrong because there's a bigger picture. Much later, Shogo is in his room working out when he hears a noise outside. He then goes to the balcony and sees that someone has moved into the apartment next door. The doorbell rings, and he opens the door to see a girl who introduces herself as Yuzurina, saying that she just moved in next door and came to say hi. Shogo then thanks her and just stares at her like his brain stopped loading. When Yuzurina asks what's wrong, Shogo says she feels familiar. She says they might have met during the board inspection at the academy and explains she was there because she's thinking of joining the school next year. Shogo then figures that would make her his junior. After smiling at him, she asks him to take care of her and calls him Big Brother, which causes Shogo to freeze like it's Dagestan weather. Inside the room, Yuzurina tells him that she's actually his younger sister. Shogo immediately asks her to explain properly because his brain isn't quite working here. She says that she's officially known as his cousin on his dad's side, and no one else knows the truth. They met once when they were kids, but he hit his head back then and forgot everything. She claims it was a long time ago, so it makes sense. She further explains that after her mother died, Shogo's dad had another family raise her. Shogo then asks if his mom knows this, and Yuzurina says no. As far as his mom knows, knows she's just a distant relative. If the truth ever came out, it would crush her. Yuzurina suddenly notices a long strand of hair in the room. She points out that it definitely isn't Shogo's, and when he claims to have no idea where it came from, she refuses to believe him. Then, she walks over to the bed and notices a smell and a stain on the sheets. Shogo freaks out and asks what she's doing, so Yuzurina says that it smells like a girl and asks what happened there. Shogo then remembers that Miyabi and Konoe once slept there, and Ikusu practically owns the bed at this point. Yuzurina immediately accuses him of bringing too many baddies into his room for unholy purposes, but Shogo says his private life is none of her business. Yuzurina reminds him that they're siblings, and she has every right to worry. She says she's not mad that he likes girls. What bothers her is that she wants him to be with someone he truly loves and could marry one day. He then takes her hand and apologizes, admitting that he didn't realize how much she cared about him. Right then, his mom calls and invites him to a Mikadana group thank you party, before saying he can bring a +1. When Shogo asks why he needs to bring a girl, his mom laughs and reminds him that he joined the academy to find a future wife, so he agrees. Later at the pool, everyone is hanging out, but then Kurumi walks up to Shogo and asks if she can oil him up. He nearly faints on the spot and asks what she's wearing, so Mei says that it's her cafe's summer uniform. Later, Mana is seen showing Yuzurina around the academy when Shogo spots them, and asks why Yuzurina is there. She explains that she wanted to learn more about the school, so she came along with a student council member. The others quickly notice Shogo standing around with Yuzurina and ask if they know each other, so Yuzurina straight up says that she's his little sister. Everyone is surprised, and to avoid people staring, they rush into the pool's storage room to talk in private. Yuzurina then introduces herself properly, and Shogo explains that on paper, she is listed as his cousin. Yuzurina adds that after she was born, Shogo's dad sent her to live with another family and paid for everything while she grew up. Miyabi then asks if she's got proof, and Yuzurina admits that she doesn't because it was all destroyed, and she then asks Shogo if he believes her. Shugo says he trusts her, but also admits he would feel better with real proof. Konoe suggests a test and reminds everyone that Shogo already took tests with her and Miyabi before, and both came back negative. Shogo agrees and asks Yuzurina if she's okay with taking one too. She instantly agrees, and Mana points out that Yuzurina being that calm makes her story sound real. Then Konoe jokes that if Yuzurina is really his sister, she would become her sister-in-law one day. Miyabi then reveals that Shogo once promised to marry her, and he quickly replies that it was just a dumb promise, so Mana laughs and roasts him for being way too popular for his own good. After Yuzurina suggests he should bring one of the girls to the Mikadana group party, all the girls get active, which makes Shogo realize why his dad left Yuzurina to get some milk. Yuzurina remains oblivious to the mess she just made and explains that she's just repeating what their mom said. Konoe immediately asks why she's not an option since she's always with him. After Rinka also asks if she can't be his wife even after he's seen her without clothes, Miyabi adds that she's bathed with him too. Shogo yells that nothing weird happened and claims they were just talking in the bathroom, which convinces absolutely nobody, of course. Konoe then makes it worse by saying that she once slept in her default skin next to him, and Miyabi says she did too. The next moment, Mana declares their arguments pointless because she will be the one going to the party with Shogo, and everyone just loses it. Right then, a teacher hears the noise and storms into the storage room, smacking Shogo with a surfboard like it's personal. Later that night, Shogo requests another test, and thankfully, Risa agrees with a promise not to tell his mom. After the call, she starts looking up Yuzurina online. Somewhere else, Miyabi is training in the pool with her coach, while Konoe is cooking for Shogo. He apologizes for making her cook both lunch and dinner, but she tells him to stop depending on food from outside. She also lets him know that dessert is coming. After dinner, Shogo admits that he really liked the food, but after he sees Konoe lying on his bed, she reveals that she is the dessert. Naturally, the inexperienced virgin refuses to snack on her plots, but Konoe insists. To get her off the bed, Shogo starts tickling her feet, but she screams loud enough to alert the whole building. Yuzurina also hears the noise from outside and gets embarrassed with her nose bleeding, so she punches the wall in frustration. Later, Shogo walks Konoe home, and she jokes that Yuzurina must be mad and blames Shogo for rejecting her. Near her house, Konoe suddenly tries to kiss him, and at that exact moment, Miyabi returns from practice and sees everything. Shogo feels something is off, so he stops and looks around. He initially sees nothing, but Miyabi is hiding somewhere, carefully watching them. Much later, the blood test results come in, and they confirm that Yuzurina really is his little sister. Shogo tells Yuzurina that he already felt she was his little sister. Now that the test has made everything clear, Yuzurina asks why he isn't taking her to the party, because if he can't bring a girlfriend, then bringing family still works. Their mom won't question it because on paper, she's just his second cousin anyway, but to him, she will always be his little sister. Yuzurina asks if he's worried about his friends, and he admits that he is, so she tells him not to stress. She explains that she was raised by a big name in the Mikadana group, so if she asks him, he can easily get invites for his friends too. Shogo relaxes after hearing this and thanks her. Later, Shogo and Yuzurina arrive at the party venue and wait for the others. Yuzurina then asks if he's nervous and says that she can stay close to him the whole time if he wants, so he doesn't freak out, but Shogo gets all embarrassed. Soon, cars start pulling up and Rinka gets out first. Then Mana shows up and immediately bumps into her. floor, almost knocking her over. Rinka scolds her for not paying attention, and Mana starts giving a lecture about greeting people politely since they're guests. Then Mana suddenly grabs Shogo and thanks him for inviting them. Mei confronts her for hugging Shogo, but she does it even more. Mana apologizes for Kanoe and says it's her turn to greet Shogo properly. Miyabi arrives next, and Shogo compliments her outfit, making her get all shy. Mana then complains that they should hurry inside because she skipped lunch and is starving. Inside the hall, Shogo's mom is giving a speech. While listening, Shogo notices Miyabi standing alone, far from the group. After the speech, Yuzurina talks with guests. On the other hand, Kanoe and Rinka sit together drinking juice, and Kanoe notices a waiter who looks familiar, but she can't remember why. Later on, Shogo is busy talking to people while Miyabi watches from afar. Then someone tells him that Miyabi is missing and not answering her phone. They say she looked distracted earlier, like her mind was somewhere else. Yuzurina shows up, and Shogo explains what's going on. He starts looking for Miyabi and thinks about asking Risa for help, but Ikusu suddenly pulls him into hiding. From there, they overhear Risa talking to someone. She's holding an envelope and talking about a Mikado group scandal. She says the envelope has important info, and admits that she found no proof of the secret offspring, but if everything goes as planned, Shogo will lose his chance to become company president. Shogo is completely stunned, and Ikusu explains that Risa is clearly trying to block Shogo from taking over and says someone else might be controlling her. Shugo thinks of telling his mom right away, but Ikusu stops him, because without real proof, it could backfire and expose the secret about the hidden offspring. Instead, she suggests watching Risa closely and catching her red-handed. Shogo doesn't like the idea, but he agrees and leaves it in Ikusu's hands. He also starts regretting trusting Risa with the blood test in the first place. Right then, Yuzurina calls him and says that Miyabi has been found, but she seems confused and is not acting very normal. Shogo thanks her and asks if they can talk in private, and when they're finally alone, Shogo tells Yuzurina everything he overheard about Risa. He asks if she knows anything about the strange letter. Yuzurina says that when his dad helped raise her, he didn't just send money, he also sent letters. She thinks the letter Risa has might be one of those, maybe written by Shogo's dad. Shogo realizes that Risa probably found out the truth about Yuzurina being his real sister while digging around after the blood test. He starts worrying about what Risa plans to do with that info. Yuzurina then says she doesn't care if the truth comes out. It might cause a huge scandal, but it would hurt the Mikadono group, not Shogo himself. This impresses Shogo as he didn't expect her to have guts. Yuzurina then says he needs to grow up, because if he wants to become company president, he needs to truly love one person, build a real family, and prove he's worthy. Shogo agrees and says that's the whole reason he joined the academy in the first place. Yuzurina adds that earlier, she talked with Miyabi, and all she did was talk about him. She says it was obvious that Miyabi truly loved him, and when Shogo says that Miyabi is usually aggressive and scary, Yuzurina explains that it's because Miyabi is always thinking about him. Shogo then asks what she thinks of Miyabi, and Yuzurina says that if Miyabi became his girlfriend, the two of them could actually be good friends. With that, they head back to the party, and Shogo thinks to himself that now that he knows who his real sister is, he can finally look for love without fear. Miyabi suddenly grabs onto him while clearly drunk and asks him to kiss her. Everyone says that she accidentally drank alcohol, thinking it was juice. They also say that she's been acting weird since she arrived. Miyabi's condition eventually gets worse, and she ends up throwing up. Much later, she wakes up in a quiet room and asks where she is. Shogo then tells her that she passed out, so he carried her there after telling his mom. She asks him if he did anything unholy while she was asleep, and Shogo immediately says no. Miyabi then goes to take a shower because she feels sweaty, but the lights suddenly go out, so she comes back and climbs on top of Shogo. He freaks out and asks what she's doing, and she asks what he thinks about her body, saying that looks aren't what matter most. She tells him to start, but our virgin boy says he's not ready, so Miyabi says she'll help and starts undressing, but Shogo notices that she's crying. He stops everything and asks why, so Miyabi begs him to stay with her and never leave again. She says that he abandoned her before, and that really hurt. He then remembers how he stopped seeing Miyabi after coming back from the hospital as a kid, so he apologizes and promises that he will stay with her from now on. She asks if he really means it, and he promises, so she finally falls asleep. Shogo gently puts her in bed and goes back outside as the party wraps up. When they ask about Miyabi, Shogo says she's sleeping deeply, and that he'll take her back to her dorm later. They jokingly warn him not to do any weird exercise while she's asleep. After Yuzurina says she's worried about Miyabi, Shogo thinks to himself that he's never actually seen them act like real friends. Then his mom shows up and scolds him for the party turning into a mess. She accuses him of not looking after his girl, and while they argue, Yuzurina slips away. Kanoko then says that she invited 5 of his school friends to the party because Risa suggested it, and this makes Shogo wonder what Risa might be planning. Later on, Yuzurina hops in the shower and starts smiling smiling as she says that everything went exactly as planned. In a dream, days later, Shogo is dressed up as Captain Bellion, acting like some big hero, and he saves Kanaway from getting hurt. He feels cool for like 2 seconds, then out of nowhere, Yuzurina shows up dressed as Captain Bellion's little sister and starts running toward him. After waking up, he hears Yuzurina outside his room, calling him to hurry up for school, like nothing weird ever happened. Minutes later, she makes breakfast for him, and he thanks her like a good little boy. Yuzurina then jokes, saying that it feels like they're a newlywed couple. This single sentence makes Shogo cringe out of his life essence. He starts coughing like an old man with weak lungs, so Yuzurina steps closer and asks if he's okay. When Shogo asks what she just said, she asks if he wants food, a bath, or her, while calling him big brother over and over and getting closer. At this point, Shogo's brain is already melting, but then he realizes that it was all in his head, while Yuzurina laughs and says she was just joking. Shogo then tells her about the day his mystery sister showed up outside his window, saying she came to marry him. Yuzurina says that never happened and tells him it was probably a prank. She says anyone could lie and say they're his sister, and Shogo agrees, thinking it will make him feel better, but it doesn't. At school, he notices that Miyabi is missing again, so Kanaway asks the teacher, and she says that Miyabi has a fever. Shogo then notices that Ikuzu looks miserable, so he asks her, and she explains how she spent the last 3 nights looking for clues about the people trying to sabotage him. After telling him to watch his back, she instantly falls asleep. Just then, some girls walk in and, after seeing Ikuzu asleep near Shogo, they instantly think some heavy plot went down. However, after Shogo panics, the girls also panic and apologize before leaving. Later, Shogo and Kanaway buy pudding and go visit Miyabi, but after opening the door, she is shocked to see them. Shogo then says they came to check on her since she's sick, but Miyabi claims it's nothing that serious because she just feels tired. Kanaway goes to make tea, but there are no tea leaves, so she leaves to go grab some, leaving Shogo alone with Miyabi. Miyabi suddenly asks Shogo to kiss her, but our virgin boy looks like his soul left his body. He asks why, and Miyabi brings up how he almost kissed Kanaway before and asks why she doesn't get one too. Then she threatens him and says that if he doesn't, she won't come to school tomorrow. She then says that they can just go on a date instead and asks if that's fine, but before Shogo can even fully process this, Kanaway comes back with tea. Miyabi instantly says that Shogo agreed to go on a date with her this Sunday. Kanaway sees them smiling and looks confused, but says nothing, while Shogo just stands there like a hostage. That night, Yuzurina cooks dinner, and while talking, she reveals that she was also at Shogo's dad's funeral. She even says she saw Kanaway there too, but this hits Shogo hard because Kanaway said she was busy taking entrance exams that day. Yuzurina then tells him to be careful and choose someone who truly cares about him and really needs him. As a result, Shogo spends the night overthinking everything as usual. The next day, Miyabi is back at school like nothing happened. After class, the student council president asks Miyabi to do an interview and a swimsuit photo shoot since she's famous as a swimmer now, so she happily agrees. Before leaving, she pulls Shogo aside and reminds him about their Sunday date, just in case his goldfish brain forgot. Later, Shogo and Kanaway are walking home, and suddenly, Shogo feels like something is wrong, so he turns around and runs back to school, leaving Kanaway behind. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Mana is watching food videos on her computer instead of working, so Rinka yells at her for using the student council computer to look at sweets. She asks if she can just watch a little bit more, but Rinka bitterly tells her that the computer is for council work alone. Then Shogo shows up, grabs Rinka, and demands answers like he's in a bad drama. Later that day, Shogo is waiting for Miyabi on their date, and after she takes 4 business days to arrive, he is stunned by her appearance. They then hold hands and spend the rest of the day at the movies and a bunch of other places. At a store much later, Miyabi tries on outfit after outfit until she puts on a swimsuit, making both of them act shy. After, they head to the pool, and while she swims, Shogo just stands there watching until she gets tired and takes him to a cafe. Around the same time, Ikusu is back on her laptop, watching footage from Captain Bellion's show. Then she realizes that Captain Bellion's little sister on screen looks exactly like Yuzurina. Years ago, Miyabi was swimming in the pool like it was easy mode, and after her lessons, her mom promised to treat her to a nice dinner at the cafe. Back in the present, the lovebirds are out walking around together and end up at a cafe. Mei spots them and starts teasing them, asking if they're on a date. Miyabi then says yes without even thinking, so Shogo feeds her ice cream to shut her up. In yet another flashback, Miyabi's mom was feeding her the same way when she was little. After that, Yuzurina is on her way somewhere and notices Shogo and Miyabi together, so she hides and watches them. Shogo tells Miyabi that he'll see her at school tomorrow and starts to walk away, but Miyabi calls him back. Out of nowhere, she kisses him, tells him she loves him, and asks him to be her boyfriend. Surprisingly, Shogo stays calm and says thanks, and then serves her emotional damage by saying no. Miyabi immediately breaks down crying and walks away, already knowing it was never going to happen. Shogo then notices Yuzurina was watching the whole thing and asks her why. Yuzurina pretends she wasn't spying, like he didn't catch her in 4K. Shogo then says they need to talk, so she follows him to his room. He tells her things didn't go the way she thought. Yuzurina looks confused, so Shogo explains that even if she tried to bring him and Miyabi together at the party, it still wouldn't have worked. He says getting involved with his real little sister would have caused a massive scandal. After Yuzurina admits that she only wanted to protect both him and Miyabi, Shogo brings up the blood test and asks if they're really siblings. Yuzurina confirms they are blood-related, so Shogo starts spiraling and worries that the test might be fake. He regrets telling Risa about it and realizes his enemy might have tricked him with a fake report. Yuzurina tells him to calm down and stop overthinking like a drama queen. Shogo then learns that Risa secretly sent a bunch of invitations using his mom's name. Yuzurina suddenly acts like she's crying and says she didn't mean to make him suspicious. Shiori apologizes to Akari for having no contributions to their discussion. Jiro calls himself a loser for Shogo then hears a name, Nayuri, and realizes that he's heard it before. Ikusu explains that it's the name of a famous young actor from 10 years ago, and that's when he finally connects the dots. Yuzurina then admits that she acted as Shogo's little sister to protect Miyabi, and Shogo gets shocked once again, and asks why she went this far. Yuzurina says she's an actress and wanted to make the plan interesting. She tells him that the person Miyabi saw at the party was actually her, just playing her role. The next day at school, Shogo gets a call about Miyabi. He immediately runs to the nurse's office, and Mei tells him that Miyabi almost drowned during swim practice, but she's okay now. She's just upset and resting at the hospital. When Shogo asks if anything weird happened to Miyabi the day before, Mei says talking won't fix anything, but Shogo insists. After Mei says she's thankful he's looking out for her, Miyabi finally wakes up. Shogo asks if she's okay, and she says yes, so they start talking. Shogo apologizes for something that happened at his dad's funeral, saying he didn't notice it back then. He says he already knew about her scholarship and why she took her exam on a different day. Miyabi then realizes that Shogo has been paying attention this whole time, even though he usually looks stupid, so they talk about how their parents met. Back then, Miyabi was at the hospital, listening as Shogo's dad gave money to her dad. She didn't understand it then, but later she realized that the money was for her. She also realizes that her first crush was actually her older brother, Shugo. Miyabi then admits that she once told Shugo she came to marry him without thinking how insane that sounded. She kept her real name hidden at school so she could stay close to him. She also knew Yuzurina was lying about being Shogo's little sister, but she let it happen because it helped her plan. Shogo is surprised by this, but he also starts to understand why Miyabi did it all. Yuzurina then says that the kid who got help from his dad was actually Miyabi. She shows a letter as proof, and Miyabi confirms it's hers before saying that she wasn't sure giving Yuzurina the letter was the right move. They go on to talk about how the whole plan brought everyone closer while keeping Miyabi safe. Miyabi admits she helped Shogo and Konoe get closer on purpose. Shogo also says the date Miyabi asked him on was also part of Yuzurina's plan. That's why Yuzurina lied about seeing Konoe at the funeral, making Miyabi finally understand Yuzurina's role in all this. Later at school, Konoe worries about Shogo and Miyabi, while Miyabi breaks down crying after learning the full truth about Yuzurina. Feeling bad, Shogo tells her it's okay and that everything is under control now. Miyabi then asks if he'll forgive her, and after laughing, Shogo says that there's nothing to forgive because they're siblings. He quickly grabs her hand and says they'll grow closer as brother and sister, not as lovers. This makes Miyabi realize that being as close as siblings is even better. Later that day, Miyabi competes in swimming, and Shogo watches as she does great and earns everyone's praise. Days later, Shogo talks to Ikusu about Yuzurina disappearing for a bit. She tells him not to worry, because his enemies won't mess with his job as group president, but he still needs to stay alert. Shogo then promises he'll always protect his little sister. Then the others show up and start clowning him, failing to find Akari before Tenjin, and Rinka jokes about him having kids already. Just then, Miyabi suddenly appears and declares that he belongs to her. This starts a loud argument between all three girls. They keep yelling, laughing, and roasting each other while Shogo sees his chance and runs away down a narrow street. Unfortunately, they notice and proceed to chase him. With the secret finally exposed, who will Shogo fall in love with? Comment part 2 to find out, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this.